The Alter Rebbe says another direct way that's opened for us that we can serve God, a direct way, serve Him, the Torah mitzvahs, to do it lishma, for its own sake. In other words, with the proper intention. That's where we're going. Intent, that is a mindful, heartfelt, or at least a mindfulness minimally intent in what it means to serve God, comes from the attribute of our forefather Jacob, Yaakov Avinu. And what his predominant attribute is rachamim, compassion, mercy. Avram is the embodiment of chesed, of kindness, loving kindness. Yitzchak, his son, Isaac, is the embodiment of gevura, strength, inner strength. And Yaakov is compassion. So, we have to create a compassion through our minds before we study Torah, for example, like now, or do a mitzvah. Great compassion before God. Now, what is that compassion? On who is that compassion? Who is that compassion? It is upon the divine spark that animates my divine soul. And why? Why should I have compassion on it? I mean, it's a divine spark. It's because it's descended from its lofty place. And what's its lofty place? We're, well, part of the Ein Sof, the life of all life, of God. And that life of all life is something that pervades the entire world in a permeating fashion. At the same time, that life of God, where the soul comes from, is also transcending the world, right? So it's immanent, pervading everything, and yet transcends everything at the same time. And compared to this life of the Ein Sof, of the limitlessness of God, everything before it is accounted as nothing. So that's where our soul comes from. Pretty lofty place, our divine soul. Now, where does it go? Well, that's part of where the compassion, we'll see why we need to have compassion, because it's coming into clothing itself in a body. And that body is called mashcha dechavia, a serpent skin. Just like as the skin is the garment that serves to the body, so likewise the body is the garment that serves the soul, that houses the soul, right? And why is it called a serpent's skin? Well, because it's unrefined, right? It's unrefined. The body that's housing, that's the garment, that is the vessel to contain the soul. And what does that mean? It means it's far removed from the light of the countenance of God, from a great distant, very distant. So that's the container, the body, but not just the body, but now that soul that's in a body is also in a world. This world that's full of klipa, coarse klipa. Klipa is the shell that covers over on truth, on reality, on godliness. That is where the soul is coming into. So coming into this body that's serpent skin, coming into a world that is full of klipa, of negativity. So it's very now distant from where it first came from, a place that is the life of life, the Ein Sof, that Ein Sof, is found in is the source of the immanence, the transcendence, and beyond even transcendence. It's everything is nothing before it. And now from that lofty place, look where it finds itself. Now that's just by the mere fact of, where God placed the soul. But that's especially so that this idea that we need to have compassion for our soul, like, in other words, just for this reality, we need to have compassion for our soul because where it came from, where it is now, but especially so in light of the fact that if we think about our actions, our words, and our thoughts, that they may not be the most worthy, right? That we have, so to speak, fettered by impious thoughts of the mind, that not only are we affecting our very soul and our very being, but also God, as it were. What does that mean? Well, the verse says that Yaakov Chevel Nachalosa, that the rope, that Jacob is the rope of inheritance. So you have a rope, top of it and the bottom. The bottom is the soul the way it is in a body. The top is the soul the way it's rooted in the Ein Sof, in God. What happens when you take this rope and you pull on it down? So not now, obviously the part that's down here, the soul in a body, you've brought it downwards, a descent into more negativity. But when you did that, the soul in the body, right, you also pulled down the top of the rope, which is the root of your soul the way it is in God. In other words, you've affected the divine. Not just our soul the way it is in the body, but where it evolved from, we've also affected the soul as it's found and it's bound up with Hashem, with God. Which means we've affected Hashem. This is something we're going to learn in the third part of Tanya at great length. In Igeres Tshuva, in chapter 5 in particular, we'll deal with that. This is the esoteric doctrine of the exile, the Shekhinah, of the divine presence of God going into exile, right? Through our actions, our words, and our thoughts, that we have that kind of an effect. Through our sin, we cause the divine presence of God to go into exile, into klipa, into the shell that covers over on the truth and reality and the presence of God, right? That's what's happening. So when we will think about this, ponder it, meditate upon this idea, and the more profoundly we do, the more profound feeling we will have of compassion. For what? Our soul, right? The soul the way it is in the body, but also the source of the soul the way it is on above. And not just the source of the soul, the source of the soul, which is of godliness, of God, of the Shekhinah, the divine presence of God. So when we think about that, to have compassion, what will that lead us to? Not guilt, compassion. That will lead us, is a meditation, a thought process to have before you study Tanya, before you do a mitzvah of being charitable, before you pray to God, or whatever mitzvah that you're engaged in, right? Because this will help you to elevate your soul in doing the mitzvah at hand. That you'll be connected with your source, the Ein Sof. All right. So what will we then do? As the verse says in Isaiah, Yeshayahu, and let him return to God and have mercy upon him. Mercy upon God. In other words, by returning to God, by having compassion over the part of God within you, over the source of that part of God that's the top of the rope, and that source, the life of life, the Ein Sof, the divine name that dwells in our soul, we have compassion upon God and his divine name that we've affected in order to return it to its proper place. And we brought it into an unclean place of klipa, and now through this compassion of doing mitzvah, we're not only restoring our own soul, but we're restoring the source of the soul, right? As God dwells within it, we're having compassion upon God. And to bring back the Shekhinah to its appropriate place, not in klipa. But this, the Alter Rebbe explains, a very interesting story in the Torah. You know, when you look at it on a superficial level, it's like, oh, what's going on over here? Famous story of when Jacob, after getting the firstborn blessings, had to leave his home, and he went to Haran, and ultimately, builds a home with the 12 sons, 12 tribes of Israel. But as he comes there, he comes to a well that's covered over, and who's he meet there? Rachel. And the verse says, upon first meeting, that Yaakov kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice, and he wept. So there's simple explanation, as Rashi explains. But the Alter Rebbe explains over here on a deeper level. What is going on over here? What does it mean that he kissed her? What does it mean that he wept? So this is to be understood as everything in Torah, again, not just on a simple level, but on a mystical level. What it means is that Rachel, if we call her Rachel Imenu, Rachel our mother, she is the embodiment of the Jewish souls. Knesset Yisrael, the community of Jewish souls, the font of all souls, the ultimate mother, right? Which is, geographically speaking, in Hasidic geography, Malchus of Atzilus. Malchus, the 10th level, right, of the world of Atzilus, the world of emanation. That's what she represents, the font of all the Jewish souls, the mother of all souls in their source. Yaakov, on the other hand, what does he represent? Well, we have that idea that we've explained till now. He represents supernal attribute of compassion. Compassion as it's found in the world of Atzilus, in the higher world. Right? That's what he represents. But he wants to do something more, even though he is the embodiment of compassion, of rachamim, right? But he wants to arouse a much greater level of compassion upon who? All the souls of the Jewish people, that she is an embodiment of. So he lifts up his voice upwards to where? To the source of all compassion, which is the 13 divine attributes of compassion. Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim. And he lifts up his voice. This is the Father of all mercies and compassion. Right? The source of it all, beyond. Otherwise, there is a concept of compassion that there is a source of compassion that is a limited form. And then there's the source of all compassion that is limitless. That's called the Father of all compassions of mercies, their source. And he weeps. He lifts up his voice and he weeps. Why does he weep? Why does he weep? Because he wants to awaken this lofty level of compassion, boundless divine compassion, that it should then be drawn down to who? To Rachel, who's the embodiment of all of the Jewish souls. That there should be this abundant compassion upon all of the Jewish souls. Why? Because ultimately the Jewish people will go into exile. They'll go into a place where they're disconnected of Klippa. And in order to have them reconnect, reunite with the Ein Sof, he is now trying to bring this, boundless compassion, that there'll be a time that the Jewish people will need it. Parenthetically, the Alter Rebbe doesn't say it here, but that's Rachel Aminu, who's is buried alone. She's the one who came out to the Jewish people from her place of burial in Beis Lachem when the Jews went into exile, and she is the one who cried for them and was there for them as they passed by her place of burial, the place that we go today to pray. So so now the Jewish soul that's in exile has been, through Yaakov and his effort here to bring this boundless compassion upon the soul, that what will that enable us? That we can still connect with God, even in a time of exile. How? Through a kiss. Through a kiss. What does a kiss represent? Cleaving of spirit to spirit, right? And specifically, what is a kiss? Two mouths that come together, and a breath that, so to speak, exchanged, shall we say, in a kiss. So what do you have here? That there'll be the kiss that the Jew in this time of exile, that God's great boundless compassion will be upon them, that they will still be able to connect and unite with God. Still connect with God through, as we're doing now, the study of Torah in particular, right, which is considered the concept of a kiss. Because what am I saying now? The words of Tanya, which is the divine word of God. So I'm mouthing the word of God, right? The mouth that is now kissing the mouth of God, as it were, metaphorically, of course. And then there is the exchange of breath, meaning the divine breath of God that now is imbued within me, saying the word of Torah. And this creates a union through the study of Torah. That's the compassion that we have, that was given, was already granted, in that now we are mindful of this through that kiss of Yaakov Avinu. So, and then furthermore, not only is there a kiss, and that's through Torah study, the union that we have with God, still connected, even in a time of exile, but also then we get the royal embrace. We're embraced by God when we do a mitzvah. God's right arm is kindness, and therefore when we give charity, an act of kindness, we get the royal embrace of God Almighty, who embraces us in the performance of that mitzvah. So, in this way now, this is the mindfulness that we can have before studying a Torah, doing a mitzvah, that we can arouse deep compassion for our soul, for the source of our soul, the divine, the Shekhinah, that will then allow us to have what we call avarabba, a great love, an intense love for God that is real, authentic, palpable, by having compassion over that part of me, that part of God in me and that part of God above, that I'm reuniting and reconnecting. And when, therefore, we're having this mindfulness before doing the mitzvah. And in conclusion, the Alter Rebbe says that this is what it's written in Isaiah, Yeshayahu, that Yaakov Cherpadas Avram, that Yaakov, he redeemed Abraham. Meaning, Yaakov, who is the embodiment, Jacob, the embodiment of compassion, redeems Abraham, who is the embodiment of loving kindness. Because loving kindness, love you can't always have. Not always possible to have the sentiment of love towards God. But compassion can redeem the love. When you don't feel that love, you can have compassion. And compassion then will redeem the love. Powerful stuff. Compassion for yourself. So we say, yeah, be compassionate, have pity on yourself. And usually that means like accept yourself with all your flaws. The Alter Rebbe brings this to a different place. Yeah, accept yourself, or accept what God did. It took a lofty soul that's a part of God and brought it into your body. That itself is a real descent. And then brought you into a world where there's just a lot of other things there that are not very soulful, are not very connective, they're not divine at all, and brings you into such a condition. So it's not a fault of yours. Pity doesn't mean when there's someone at fault and therefore have pity nonetheless on them. Compassion means just a reality of a situation, of a divine soul. Now, all the more so when through that reality that God created, we brought it to a worsened reality through our behavior. We did something wrong, did something sinful. So not only did we bring our soul further into an abyss, but we've affected as the rope that attaches our soul, the weights in the body, to its root source, the life of life, to the Shekhinah, to the divine presence of God. And also brought that into a state of exile. Wow, we can have that effect on God. But the beautiful thing is that when we're aware of that, I can have that effect in the negative. So now I'm supposed to have compassion over my soul and the source of my soul, of the divine, before I study Tanya, before I do a mitzvah. In other words, can you imagine if in the negative you have that effect, how much greater it is in the positive? Not only the effect on us, our very own soul, but the source of that, God's presence, that I can have that effect, a positive effect. How? By what we're doing right now, learning Torah, doing a mitzvah. That is extremely empowering. So instead of having compassion on like just, oh, have pity on yourself, hey, you're only human, have pity. Here's the, no, you're only divine. Have pity on the divine in you. And instead of the way we usually would have pity on ourselves, we'll kind of just leave ourselves in the same state and we would not change anything. This is life altering. This really brings a change in me. Because when I'm think about this, mindful of it, even ponder or meditate upon it for, whatever, even a brief time, that is life altering. It's not merely keeping me in the same space or in the same, place of living. We need to try to bring this into our lives a bit, and we'll see how it'll beautify our lives. And what compassion can do that love can't do sometimes. Because not always can you, think about someone that you ought to love, and you're not feeling love towards them. They didn't act too lovable that I'm feeling lovable towards them. Yeah, but you should love them, nonetheless. But you can't get yourself there. So you know how you do it? I've done this myself many a time for myself and helped many people with this. Have compassion on them. Have compassion upon them. You'll have that compassion upon them. Maybe the compassion is they're very weak. They're very broken. They don't seem to be, so capable. They're just kind of in a negative rut. Have compassion upon them. And that will redeem the love. That will bring out the love. And perhaps that's exactly what they need. That you should be loving towards them even though they're not really too lovable in the moment. And that's what we need to be there for them. So when you'll have compassion, you'll have pity, it will redeem it. Very powerful stuff. Okay. Do you have any questions, any comments, any thoughts on this? Folks, just want to remind you, we have a lot of people that have signed up already. I noticed some actually closer people that I thought would be signing up already. I'm sure because these things are life altering, but not necessarily does it translate into something that really alters us besides being inspired. And what I'm trying to do with TRC, which God willing will do, is that we shouldn't just be inspired, but that we can truly live. And what we're doing here is inspirational, but not enough that we can live these things that we're talking about. That comes out in more so in what we're going to be doing in our community together. So I'm sure that you all want this. I mean, you're here every day. I don't believe people are just coming to be inspired. It's not enough inspiration, because that's not ownership. Inspiration is from beyond you, and of course you need we all need inspiration, but it's the perspiration of ownership. And that's why, again, I mentioned the fact, and again, that I mean, there's a minimal cost that comes with this, because that's part of ownership. You can't own something for free. June, you're right. Forget the psychologists. Just study Tanya. Couldn't agree with you more. Well, sometimes you might need, and some, but not. The truth is, no, it's all here. Yeah, thank you, June. So, again, that ownership comes on many different levels, and part of ownership is a payment that shows a seriousness that you're taking for your life, owning what we're learning here and bringing it to the next level. So I'm really encouraging you, and especially now, by the way, if you sign up now for another 6 days, you'll also get with me a mini private session with me if you sign up now, which you know, maybe you don't want, or maybe, I'm sure you do. I'm sure it'll be only but good and beneficial. So again, encouraging. Many have signed up, and I'm sure we're going to get many more. So we got, I think, until May the 10th. I'm looking forward to this immensely. Lori, can you distinguish between feeling sorry for a person and having compassion? I mean, they're somewhat related, you know. So, compassion. Sorry might just see that, you know, you feel bad for them, you know. Compassion might be a little more proactive, as opposed to feeling sorry, like you're feeling bad, but there isn't the positive side necessarily to that, right? In those words, I'm just playing with the words right now, as opposed to the concept. In those words, yeah, it's kind of limited. Compassion is more of a positive look at it, or proactive measure, as opposed to sorry. Sorry will just, you know, you feel bad and it just leaves you there. Compassion leads you maybe to something, to an action. Okay? John, I'm not sure what your question is. Do we still learn new insights from your teaching of Tanya? I mean, yeah, of course we're going to still have the daily class here. Yeah. You know, that's not going to change. It's going to, but that might not change us enough. I'm not sure if that's what you meant, but yes, it will continue. Yusuf, where does it say that all sevenths are beloved? I don't remember the original medrash that says that, but it's quoted by the Rebbe in his Basi Lagani's Hasidic discourses for Yuchvat. Okay. Yeah, it'll still continue here at 9:30 every morning. Oh, John is asking. Okay, thank you, John. Do I personally still learn new insights from the teacher? Do I personally still learn new insights? Absolutely. Yeah. Been teaching this for many years now, and it doesn't become stale, Tanya, and I see deeper insights each time. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, John. Okay, on Instagram we have some questions. Remember, 2 question marks before you ask a question. Um, since God is perfect and complete, how is it possible that he could somehow negatively impact or affect? How can we negatively affect and impact God? Very good question, Yehuda. Does that not suggest that lowering God in some level and thus indicate deficiency? If God were needy, like, we may be needy, and that neediness is a deficiency in us. But if I freely choose, not compelled to choose, but freely choose that what you do affects me, then that's not a deficiency. That came because, not because I was compelled to choose, but I chose because I chose, because that's what I want. Not out of neededness, but that's what I want. That's not a deficiency. It's coming from actually a very powerful place. So God chose that he wants that our thought, speech, and action, our behavior, affects him for the positive and for the negative. He wasn't compelled because he is lacking and needy. No, it comes from a wholeness, and yet he chooses that, which is very powerful when you think about that. So it becomes actually even, when you need something and you're needy. So you can be very needy, somewhat needy, and maybe that neediness, that deficiency will be, the hole in your soul will be lessened, so you're not so needy anymore. So I don't need your favor anymore. I don't need your goodness anymore. I'm okay now. I don't have that deficiency. But that's because you were compelled to choose to want something, to need, because you were needy, because you were compelled by some deficiency. But if it's not coming from a from a deficiency, and then therefore that compels you, but it's coming because so you want. Why? Just because. Not for, because God just wants that. He desires that. For why? Just because. Not from a deficiency. Oh, that's a very different story. And by the way, we can also live that way on some level. On some level. Let me continue over here. On Instagram, I think there might be another question here. Yeah. Needing and wanting, compelled choice and free choice. True free choice without being compelled. I hope that is clear. Marcy, please share.
When you were talking just a moment ago about, the difference between choosing to need someone choosing to need and wanting to, or not choosing, being compelled to need it, it reminded me of, this, when we get married, right, we're choosing to incorporate someone's happiness into our own. And when we have children, we're choosing to incorporate somebody else's happiness into our own. It's not a state where those are things that we absolutely require in order to be happy or to live. These are things that we are adding to our own needs because we love somebody. And so that kind of, if we're looking for a real world kind of model for what that looks like. But what I wanted to actually ask
So one
was,
second, before you ask your question, I just want to respond to that, if you don't mind, Marcy.
please.
Okay. So, I'm going to give you a Jewish response, yes and no. You're correct in what you're saying. That is um, is um, is somewhat of an ideal, but not necessarily. Sometimes you love a person because of your deficiencies, and they fill a gap in your soul that is you're lacking, and therefore you are compelled. And I would suggest that most people, that's how the relationship begins, because of a neediness. But where it needs to develop to is, I want you. It starts with being, I need you, but it should come to, I want you. That's what I think in most instances what it is. I don't think it is, there are compelling things. Um, in other words, you do things for me that um, just, fill my soul, fill me. So that's a neediness. Now from there to come, and it's not because of those things that I need, but I've come to a greater place. Is I want you, not just what you provide for me, right? But it's you that I want. That's a much more. That's not so simple to get there, and I don't think most people. It's compelling things about the other individual that we want them, need them in our lives. Now, yes, those compelling things can bring you ultimately to a better place that you. It's not that I'm not because I need, because I want you, as opposed to I need the things of you. Does that bring some clarity?
Yes, although it also makes me very grateful for my relationship.
So, listen, we are we are like we are like God, but we also have another side to us, and that part is compelling. And what we're learning here is that we can ultimately rise beyond that. Um, but yes, thank you for sharing that. Sorry, you wanted to add something, Mars. Go ahead.
I actually had a question
Oh,
also.
okay, go
I
ahead.
wanted to ask about the TRC program, because it's hard for me to figure out from the website what is actually involved and what the time commitment is and when the time commitment is and things like that.
Right.
And it's hard for me to make any kind of commitment until I know that.
Gotcha. Um, so, there's a once a week. Um, right now, it'll start with once a week, and pending, the need, if it'll be more times available than once a week, of coming together and having, bringing everything that we're discussing here in a much more personal manner that we can um, take home and grow with it. Right now, it'll start off with Sunday nights, 8 o'clock. There'll be once a month, um, bringing in, and that can vary when that once a month will be, of bringing in some expert in different areas. And then there'll be, a group that we can develop with different chats and different things that will be timeless. And hopefully what it'll be is there'll be more time schedule, that if whatever fits your schedule, that you'll be able to tap into. So but it'll start with a Sunday night, and then there'll be one or two other times that hopefully will develop into available times that you can fit into your schedule. And it's not like if you miss a week that you've missed something, or that that you are not able to continue. So it won't be like, like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. Oh, I missed chapter 1. Let me, it's not going to be that way. So you'll, even if something happens one week and for whatever reason you're not able to be a part of, you can continue it. So that's basically it. Thank you, Marcy. Any further question in that respect?
No, although I'm never available on Sunday nights, so I probably can't do it.
Right. Okay. So I mean, again, it's starting there. It's not finishing there. But yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I'll keep an eye on times as they become available.
Okay. Great. Michael, please share with us.
Thanks for mentioning the merit and the remembrance of the victims and for Yom HaZikaron. I thought about the compassion, and I thought about King David. King David was surely one of the biggest leaders of the Jewish people, but on the other side he had big character flaws, and he was aware of these character flaws, but he tried to strive upwards, to elevate himself. It wasn't so that he said, "Oh, I'm a sinner, I'm such a bad person," and that this teared him down. And when he would have no compassion for himself, he couldn't follow his obligation to lead his people. On the other side, he judged himself in private and thought about it, but with compassion and heart, and out of that he was aware that you should love yourself, and that your flaws aren't eternal. He wrote the half of the Tehillim, something what not only elevated him.
So Michael, so what's the question exactly?
Is it when we don't have compassion for us that we can follow our obligations and tear the people around us also down? When I have no compassion for myself, and I have a family, or I have people who look upwards to me, then will I tear them also down, or should I only judge myself in private?
I'm not certain I get exactly what you're saying.
Should a father, as example, should a spouse, should you speak with your spouse about when you judge yourselves, or will this lead to that she gets negative influence of your thoughts, or should we only
no, this is something internal within us. The compassion. It needs to be something internal within us. It's not something outside of us. I mean, it's expressed outside of us, but it's an inside job. Okay. All right. Thank you, Anna. She's having a difficulty with understanding what does it mean God is whole and perfect. What does it mean free? That He's choice coming in. How do we know it's a free choice or a choice at all? Not clear. I'm not exactly clear. And think about it. Most of the choices we make are compelled choices. In other words, what does it mean compelled choice? It means if you like chocolate, so you eat chocolate, you choose to eat chocolate. Is that really? It's a compelled choice, right? If you have an apple in front of you and an orange, you love apples and you're deathly allergic to oranges. Is there much of a choice there? It's kind of a compelled choice. I love apples and I'm deathly allergic to oranges, so obviously I'm choosing the apple, right? That's a compelled choice. Most of our choices we make are compelled by something in us. When God is choosing that our actions make a difference to him, our behavior, thought, speech, and action makes a difference to him, it's not because, that's like the apple that I love. No. It was not. He chose that he should love our mitzvahs, and that he is allergic, hates the sin. In other words, it's inherently so. It's not inherent of him, as opposed to something that's compelled. I choose to have you in my life not because of the wonderful things that you do for me that make me feel good, but because I so choose. Because I want you. Why? It's beyond a reason. And that's, the Alter Rebbe says that that's something that there's nothing even to ask. That's what he wants. Intrinsically. Do you want, I don't know, things in your life intrinsically? What do you want intrinsically? The only thing that you want intrinsically is to connect to God and to do good. Because that's intrinsic to your very soul. So God wants that intrinsically, not because it's something lacking, missing. Yeah, it's not such a simple idea. Well, we'll deal with it further. We'll deal with it further in TRC because it's actually an important idea. All right, folks, please do sign up. Looking forward. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad in Judaism.Chabad. It's a privilege and pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have a great day. God bless you all.